Okay, Sarah, if you want to.
I'll be real brief. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining. We hope we have others in the community that will come out and take part as well. But I do want to thank everybody for coming on, and hopefully, again, people will continue to take part of this, because again, this is an ongoing process. So Michelle, with that said, let's move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So we are recording this so people can catch us again. We will put the link on the city's Facebook page and the website. So the following is a presentation. The following presentation is the culmination of the work done over the last several months. While we, the city, knew at the beginning of the study that we have many programs that supported sustainability, we realized that the city lacked a formal plan that many of our sister cities and surrounding counties had. This lack of focus prevented us from streamlining programs and getting our residents and businesses to fully engage in a sustainable Laurel. The scope of the work for phase one was to provide the city with a framework that we could use to design and build a solid sustainability plan. Part of my role as the city's environmental programs manager is to focus on supporting the city's commitment to move its operations in our community towards a more sustainable future that embraces the foundations of sustainability, economy, society, and the environment. I've worked with all the city departments to provide the foundational information to the Washington Metropolitan Council of Governments, COG, and COG's consultant, Cadmus, in order to facilitate the development, coordination, and administration of environmental policies and practices for the city, and assess the impact of those environmental practices to the city and community at large. Promoting the city's goals and objective for a healthy environment, excellent quality of life, and continued economic vitality. Because of the city's relationship with COG, the city was able to tap into COG's expansive expertise in such areas as the environment, transportation, and community. COG is an independent nonprofit association with a membership of 300 elected officials from 24 local governments, the Maryland and Virginia state legislatures, and US Congress. Every month, more than 1,500 officials and experts connect through COG to share information and develop solutions to the region's major challenges. Through an MOU, the administration accepted the proposal of Cadmus, one of COG's experts consultants in the fields of sustainability, to evaluate the city's current program, objectives, and goals. Cadmus has a long history supporting the COG with project management, sustainability plans, presentations, and stakeholder engagement. They have a history of supporting local governments, regional organizations, nonprofits, and federal agencies with sustainability, clean energy, and resiliency planning under the COG Climate Master Agreement. Cadmus is currently supporting PG County with its climate action planning process. Additionally, Cadmus is engaged with other local governments in its region and COG members in supporting them on climate work. The first objective of this study is to provide the city with a sustainable organization plan and community framework. The basis of this plan will be the leading by example approach. As part of this study and plan, environmental programs will focus on adopting a definition for our sustainability program, promoting environmental awareness with city employees and as part of the city's culture, coordinating the implementation of approved recommendations resulting from the phase one study. And COG has completed our greenhouse gas emissions from local government operations, and they will give an overview of where Laurel stands in relation to our surrounding jurisdictions. COG will present the inventory. Cadmus will give project summary to date, which includes the city's working definition, as well as the recommendations. At the end, I will highlight some of the initiatives that the city has already undertaken or will be undertaking as part of our leading by example formula. If you, we're asking that you put your questions in the chat. Depending on time, we will address your questions after each presentation. Any questions that we cannot address during the meeting will be answered via email as soon as possible. And with that, I will hand it over to COG.
Thanks, Michelle. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So hi, everyone. I'm Jeff King. I manage the Climate, Energy, and Air program at COG. And with me today from COG is Maya Davis. COG's work on climate started back in around 2006, 2007, culminating in a COG board resolution in 2008, laying out our COG climate agenda, which involved 80% reduction in emissions by 2050 and some interim goals. One of the things that's that I'll have Maya discuss this. We had a 2020 goal, but we had no goals between 2020 and 2050. And in the last year and a half, 2 years, we've been involved in quite an effort to come up with a new interim goal for 2030. Maya is our technical lead on all our sustainability climate work. And so I'll have asked her to kind of walk you through the history of our 2008, the context of the 2008 climate report and the adoption of that agenda back a little over 10 years ago, and then the new goals and the inventory that we've done for the city, and the background on what else is occurring around the region. So Maya?
Great, thank you, Jeff. So the 2008 goals that were adopted by the COG board was to reduce from the projected business as usual projections by 10%. And so the goal was to essentially get below 2005 levels. And 2020 was 20% below 2005 levels by 2020. And as Jeff said, 80% by 2050. Now, in the past year, when we adopted our new plan and new goals, the board adopted a 50% by 2030 reduction below 2005 levels. And the Regional Transportation Planning Board has also affirmed all of these goals to support those reductions from the transportation sector. And as you can see from the chart, the region has met the first 2012 goal, where we have certainly reduced below the 2005 levels. And by 2018, regional greenhouse gas emissions dropped 13% below 2005 levels. So we went from the 71.8 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent down to 62.6 million metric tons. We have begun working on assessing 2020 greenhouse gas emissions to look at how close the region and local jurisdictions have come to meeting that 20% by 2020 goal. And our preliminary rough assessments using the data we currently have available shows that emissions may have dropped an additional 10% in 2020 due to the pandemic, but we'll know more as we continue to collect more data and get more final localized data. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at the Laurel Government Operations Inventory that was recently completed. Total greenhouse gas emissions from the City of Laurel Government Operations is 2,318 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. The majority of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the vehicle fleet. This includes on-road and off-road vehicles. Most of the emissions from fleets come from the gasoline consumption of the police department, which I don't think is any surprise there. And a distant second is diesel consumption from refuse vehicles. The majority of the building and facility emissions come from building electricity use. There is also some propane use in the buildings as well. The community center and the public works facilities are two of the highest energy consumption users from government operations. There's also a small amount of electricity that's used at the park fields. For streetlights, about 56% of the city's streetlights are sodium vapor, 42% are LED, and 2% are mercury vapor. So the 42% LED lights is actually a higher percentage that has been achieved in the city compared to other communities that we've looked at in suburban Maryland. There is only a small portion of emissions that come from solid waste and wastewater. Wastewater treatment only accounts for about 1 metric ton of CO2 equivalent, which is less than 1% of the government operations emissions. And the sliver of the pie is so small, it doesn't even really show up on the pie chart here that's on your screen. Laurel community-wide emissions are 302,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So Laurel government operations only account for about 1% of total community-wide emissions. And Laurel government operation greenhouse gas emissions, you know, that's in terms of like the entire community-wide emissions across the entire metropolitan Washington region, it's only like 0.004% of total emissions across the region. Next slide, please. So just to let you all know, we've been working with a number of communities across the region on local climate and sustainability plans. In Prince George's County, we are currently working on the climate action plan, and it addresses government operations, community operations, government operations and community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. We're working on mitigation and resilience underneath that plan. In Fairfax County, we've worked on been a part of the team that worked on the mitigation plan, as well as serving as technical advisors on the resilience planning effort that is newly underway. We've also supported Arlington County, Tacoma Park, District of Columbia, and upcoming is work in Frederick County. We are wrapping up a government operations plan for the city of Frederick. And of course, we are working with the city of Laurel, and there's more jurisdictions to come in the future. And the typical components of these plans is we usually do greenhouse gas emissions inventory, like we just talked about for the city of Laurel. And we look at projections if, you know, with population and employment growth and increased government services over the coming years, how could that potentially affect, you know, overall greenhouse gas emissions in the future? We also look at what are the goals and sub-targets for the plans. We identify strategies and actions, and then the metrics that we need to track and get there, and how can we, you know, visually represent that progress that's being made through dashboards, essentially. And then, of course, there's always a community engagement and education and outreach program. When we're focusing on government operations, it's a little bit less, but certainly present. But when you go into the, you know, sort of community-wide climate or sustainability planning, there is a much more robust public engagement process. So we are certainly also in all of these efforts, I would say another piece is looking at equity, racial equity and health equity, and how that, and the intersection of climate and sustainability planning. So with that, I will stop there and pass it back. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't see anything in the chat. I don't know if anyone has any questions. If not, they can put it in the chat and we'll go on to Cadmus.
Thanks, Michelle and Maya. My name is Liz Hansen. I'm a senior associate at Cadmus and working with Laurel on this project. Just quickly, I think Maya actually gave a lot of the great context on the work that we have the pleasure of doing with COG. But Cadmus is an employee-owned technical and strategic consultancy, and we work with COG throughout the region, as Maya described, typically on sustainability plans, climate action plans, and resiliency plans. And some of the ones that she mentioned, we've also had the fortune of working on. So we've worked with the city of Rockville for climate planning support, Prince George's County, similar climate action, so both mitigation and resiliency. Same in Tacoma Park, actively working in Fairfax County now on their resiliency plan, their climate risk and vulnerability assessment and resilient Fairfax plan, and also working with the District of Columbia on their climate resilience and adaptation planning. And that one has gone on for a number of years, and very excited that that work has now extended to the city of Laurel. Next slide, Michelle. So just quickly on what we've been working on with Michelle and with the city of Laurel. This was a small scope of work, a limited timeline to really get started, as Michelle said, to lay the foundation for the sustainability program that Michelle will be leading the design of. We think it's great that Laurel has established an environment program, and we were here to help sort of assess what work they've done previously, what work they want to accomplish in the year ahead, and make some recommendations based on our experience in other jurisdictions. So we started that work together in May, and we'll be wrapping up at least this phase of work this month. And our work includes 4 tasks. So first, we did a gap analysis and strategy identification. So this was really working with the folks across the city of Laurel who are engaged in sustainability or sort of environmental efforts to understand what they've been working on, how they hope to grow, taking a look at the inventory that Maya shared, and starting to identify some preliminary strategies. Step 2, task 2, we worked with Michelle to refine those and to put a little more detail together on how the city of Laurel over the course of the next year could take action on those. Megan my colleague, will speak a little bit more about what those entail, and I'll go through the strategies in just a moment. And then we're wrapping up with putting together a final memo. And then throughout, we've been meeting with folks in the community and in Laurel city government like we are today. Next slide. So the 5 strategies that we came up with in terms of helping to establish Laurel sustainability program are here on your screen. So the very first one was really to develop a sustainability framework for Laurel. So Michelle alluded to the definition that is under development, which I'll go through in just a moment, but really honing in on what sustainability means to Laurel, and then not only defining it, but also establishing a framework for what types of topics the community finds important, the city finds important, and sort of how those will be organized. Step 2, or strategy 2, is making sure that there are processes for engaging city departments and community members. We know that the strongest plans are not just housed in the environment department or in the sustainability program, that they really do engage with and harness the expertise and insights of colleagues across city government, as well as people in the community who have not only expertise, but really important lived experience that should help inform what sustainability means, how it is implemented, and sort of what changes come to the community because of it. Strategy 3 is, once you have a sense of what you're aiming for in terms of sustainability, is really developing a baseline for where you are today, sort of where you're building from. Again, strongest plans tend to build upon the progress that has already been made, as well as addressing any issues that are potentially impeding progress from being made. So understanding sort of the baseline that we're working from is an important place to start. Strategy 4, developing programs to achieve goals. So once you've got that vision of what sustainability in Laurel looks like and where you are today, you start to define those strategies, as Maya identified previously, of sort of what are the incremental steps that the city of Laurel, the city programs, as well as the community can take to move to that more sustainable future. And then task or strategy 5, track and disclose metrics. So understand sort of what's the important criteria you'll be tracking to evaluate sort of how you are doing along that progress. Greenhouse gas emissions are often part of this bucket, but there are also many other important considerations to make sure that you're tracking individual programs and how they're being implemented, the equity considerations of that, et cetera. And Megan will provide a little bit more context on some of the programs as well as some of the metrics that we've recommended Laurel consider as they're designing their program. So next slide, Michelle. Thanks. So I think Michelle alluded to this already, but one of the things that we did as part of this first phase was work with the City of Laurel to identify sustainability definitions that could help to inform theirs. So folks like the EPA, as well as surrounding communities whose sustainability programs they admired, they put together an initial definition, sort of Michelle working closely with the mayor, and we workshopped that definition with senior staff across the City of Laurel, and they provided feedback. And we have arrived at this definition, which, as Michelle mentioned earlier, includes environmental, social, and economic considerations of sustainability. So weaving together planetary considerations, people considerations, and prosperity. So happy to take feedback on this definition today if there is any, or I know this is being recorded, so happy to take it after the fact, but anticipate that finalizing this will help to make the additional strategies possible to sort of build upon this. But we do expect that there will be some iteration as the City of Laurel goes out and engages community members more in phase 2. So next slide, and I think that's it for me, and I'll be turning over to my colleague, Megan. Yes, before I go, it looks like Mr. Jackson has a question.
Yes, Mr. Jackson here. What do you mean, or what do you refer to when you are speaking about resiliency and resiliency planning?
Yeah, absolutely. So the work that we've done in other locations includes resiliency, which is essentially an individual, communities, businesses, sort of whatever you're looking at, ability to withstand, respond to, and sort of bounce back from a shock. So typically we end up looking at vulnerability, which is a combination of sort of exposure to a risk, as well as sensitivity to a risk, and then their adaptive capacity. And we take a look at that risk, and then we take a look at what are typically called adaptation opportunities. So what changes can or should you make to decrease the risk? So you can think about this, for example, with flooding, right? So if there's a building in a floodplain, there are many things you can do in terms of wetproofing the first floor, raising the base flood elevation, and each of those sort of adaptive strategies lowers the risk and ideally increases the resilience. That's obviously a definition of physical resilience. There's also community resilience and strategies there to make sure that, for example, people have access to air conditioning on really hot days, regardless of socioeconomic status. That, you know, if there are centers for cooling and it's a multilingual community, that those are distributed in many languages. So in terms of resilience, I think that's the definition we typically use, but we're basically looking to make sure that a community or a physical location, depending on what the scope of work we're looking at, is strong enough to weather potential future climate impacts. I think you're muted. Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. All right, Megan.
Thanks, Liz. And hi, everyone. I'm Megan. I'm a senior analyst on Cadmus's sustainability and energy team. And I'll talk through some of the other strategy recommendations that Liz identified on that earlier slide, starting with our draft engagement recommendations. So to support Laurel in establishing transparent processes for engaging city departments and community members on current and future sustainability initiatives, we provided a set of potential engagement approaches for Laurel to consider implementing. So for internal engagement with other city departments, we suggested that the environmental programs manager, one, regularly engage with department heads and relevant staff to discuss and plan for sustainability initiatives that are relevant to their department. 2, institutionalize a standing sustainability meeting with all department heads to discuss the overall progress and direction of the sustainability program, and provide staff the opportunity to learn from and engage on initiatives occurring in other departments. And 3, provide regular updates on the sustainability program to all city staff and city council, including those who are not regularly involved in sustainability initiatives. And then for when the city has moved past this more foundational phase and is starting to focus more on community-wide sustainability initiatives, we also provided some suggestions for engaging with the broader community. So these include hosting regular webinars or community meetings to provide updates and further engage Laurel residents and businesses on sustainability initiatives. 2, conduct additional surveys. As you may know, there was already an initial survey to gauge the community's general interest and priorities, and the city could consider conducting an additional survey to solicit more specific feedback on specific programs or specific strategies or goals. And lastly, maintaining and consistently updating the city's Green Living page, which lives on the city's website, and implementing a communication strategy that celebrates success and acknowledges collaborators. So next slide, please. Thank you. So to help Laurel in establishing a framework to guide the development of future plans and initiatives, as Liz mentioned, we provided a set of potential topics that Laurel could consider focusing on, as well as a potential near-term action that could be taken as the sustainability program is still being solidified. So I should note before I get into it that this is an initial list of topic areas that's more focused on the environmental component of sustainability, and that Michelle and her staff may wish to make further adjustments as the program is solidified. And I should also mention that these near-term action items are really meant to highlight some of the things that Laurel can do as a first step, but it's not meant to be comprehensive. But so this first topic area is clean electricity generation. So this would include programs and strategies that increase utilization of clean and renewable energy sources such as wind and solar to power city operations and the broader community. And a potential first step could be to conduct a solar feasibility assessment for city buildings and facilities to see where solar might be feasible. 2 is buildings and facilities. This would include programs and strategies that improve energy efficiency or reduce reliance on fossil fuels to generate heat and hot water in buildings and facilities. A potential near-term action item could be to conduct an energy assessment of city buildings and facilities to identify opportunities for efficiency improvements. The third topic area is transportation. This would include programs and strategies that support a transition towards hybrid and electric vehicles across city operations and the broader community. Potential near-term actions or first steps could be to implement a survey to better understand city employees' transportation behavior and trends to identify opportunities for improvement. 4th is waste. This would include programs and strategies that reduce waste and waste-related emissions. A near-term action could include introducing composting bins in city buildings and facilities. And lastly, the last topic area of focus we proposed was land use. This would include programs and strategies that protect and enhance existing open spaces and encourage development patterns that promote alternative modes of transportation and help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So a potential near-term step here could be promoting the planting of local and native plants and trees. And last slide, thanks, Michelle. So lastly, as Laurel establishes its sustainability program, it will be important to establish a process for measuring success. So to support Laurel in identifying a set of metrics that would enable them to track their sustainability progress, we provided an initial set of recommendations for Laurel to consider. And as I noted on the previous slide, this is an initial set and could be adjusted as the program is solidified. But a few of the metrics we've identified here One that's sort of cross-cutting across all of the topic areas would be greenhouse gas emissions and tracking reductions over time across the various sectors. Within the clean electricity generation topic area, this could include tracking megawatts of renewable energy that is installed or procured. Within buildings and facilities, this could include tracking total electricity consumption, fuel or gas usage, and energy intensity within owned and operated buildings and facilities. Within transportation, a potential metric could be the number of electric or hybrid vehicles within the city fleet. It could also potentially be tracking total vehicle miles traveled among city employees. Within waste, you could be tracking total organic waste composted and diverted from landfills. Similarly, tracking total plastic and other recyclable materials diverted from landfills. And lastly, within land use, you could potentially track the total area of public green space, as well as the number of street trees. So I will pause here. Liz and I are happy to answer any quick clarification questions related to our process, but otherwise are happy to pass to Michelle to speak a bit more about what the city is doing.
Anyone have any questions? No? Okay. So, so thank you, COG and Cadmus, for giving us an update. So phase one is review Laurel's progress to date to lay a foundation. And the next slides are going to show you areas that we are currently advancing on, and using the example of using the formula of lead by example. And then I'll also talk about a little bit about the legislation and executive orders. And then we'll go into like where we go next from here. So current initiative, and this is something that we touched on, the solar feasibility study. And this is, again, directed at city facilities as of now. And with Parks and Recreation, we will be working with the Capital Area Solar Co-op, and we will do an assessment before the end of the year of city buildings and where we can actually put some solar panels to reduce the energy consumption on city buildings. And that we anticipate having our assessment completed by year's end and presented to the mayor and administration and council for next steps. We were talking about the employee survey, again, to make sure that it's important that the city employees are speaking with one voice and understand what our objective here is when we talk about sustainability and leading by example. So the first one is to conduct an internal audit of the city employees' recycling habits and our energy usage. And so again, you start at the very beginning, and we're gonna have little pop quizzes and maybe some frowny faces and maybe some smiley faces, but definitely to look at what we're doing as a city. Part of that is to survey employees about recycle right. Again, recycling has gotten a bad rep lately. There's a lot of public opinion about what is and isn't being recycled, and recycling has been around a long time, and we have a tendency to become lackadaisical with our recycling habits. And we go into, well, let's just throw it in the recycling, and if they don't want it, then they'll take it out. And that whole idea, that whole concept of recycling has changed dramatically over the last several years for several factors. But part of that is recycle right. And we really want the employees to understand so that we have one voice, so no matter who someone talks to, what resident has interface with the city employee, we are all basically have the same message, and we're recycling right. Organics, what do we really know? We use that word a lot, and we're not, and I guess we're not using it correctly, because what we're doing is we're collecting food waste diverting it from the landfill, and it's becoming organic compost. So we're taking the organics out of the waste stream. And that's important for several reasons, and I will get I will get to that in a later slide. And again, the message, educating our employees, is the most important task that we found that we have ahead of us at this moment. Again, leading by example. How can city employees positively impact citywide programs and reduce the city's greenhouse gas emissions? One of those is obviously where can we carpool? What are take-home vehicles? How does the mayor and the administration, how do we want to start migrating towards hybrids and electric vehicles? How do we get our foundation set up with charging stations? So there's a lot of work. Our Parks and Rec department works very hard on our tree canopy, and with our program Open Space. Something as simple as they have worked on all city facilities to change to migrate us to LED electricity in our lights. So that has made an impact. But it's something as simple as what you would do at home when you leave the bathroom, when you leave a room, you would shut off the light, right? That seems kind of logical. Many of us do not leave our bathroom lights on 24/7. So in a city environment, that is also something that we have to, kind of get used to be more sensitive to. You don't leave lights on, you recycle correctly, you compost, or you divert your waste. And that brings me to the waste management and recycling, which is a citywide initiative. And right now, our Recycle Coach app, which is available on your resident's phone and also on the computer, it's been updated, and the emphasis is on education. So wish cycling, contamination reduction, knowing the basics, and improving the residents' use of ease. We have right now, what we will be doing within the next couple of weeks is promoting the Spanish version of What Goes Where, to reach more of our population, to explain what can go in the green containers and what cannot go into the green containers, or green recycling toters. The biggest, does someone have a question? Okay. All right, so then we're talking about the positive impacts of our organics collection and how it helps reduce greenhouse gas emission and help the environment. And that is a program that's near and dear to my heart, because we developed a pilot program about this time 2 years ago, and it was really well received, and we made a big impact. We've streamlined it. We've made it more user-friendly. We're looking at different, how you can have composting partners. You can partner with your neighbor, and we have expanded it. So the BBC released an article about the findings in a UN report, the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And again, this is a UN report. And what they said was the study suggests that 30 to 50% of the current rise in temperature is down to this powerful but short-lived gas, which is methane. And so why is it so important that we keep as much food waste out of the landfill? Is because it produces methane gas. And methane, while it doesn't last as long in the atmosphere, which is good news, it is now, they're finding in this study that it's a major source of the current rise in temperature. So what can we do on a local level? Well, that's what we're doing now. We are focusing on getting the organics out of the landfill. And we're doing that through our organics collection. And hopefully we're doing it through reducing how many days we're picking up trash. So to get people to focus on, really what goes where. Another initiative that we're working on right now, which brings in walkability, green, sustainability, education, is we're working with ECD, Economic and Community Development, and myself. We're working on T-Mobile's Hometown Grant. And this grant will be able to create a sustainable destination for residents and visitors. It's a living classroom, a visitor center, a heritage garden, and a butterfly garden. Solar power will also provide electricity to the outdoor gazebo, making it a sustainable destination for rentals. So not only is it for residents to walk the path that we're hoping to create through a Parks and Rec grant that they've already obtained to bring the south side of the city off of Van Dusen towards Goody Mansion and visit the mansion, be able to sit and look at the butterfly garden, take part in the heritage garden, and see the visitor center, and also to rent out the space during nice weather, using solar panels to provide electricity. And what else are we doing? So expanding the deployment of the Big Belly solar powered compacting refuse and recycling containers. For those of you who live in Laurel, you've seen them on Main Street. We're expanding the program, and we are getting different ones that actually have a wrap around them that will promote city events and promote recycling and the sustainability plan. They are solar powered, so that's really cool. They're kind of big, but we're going to expand them to our parks also. And the other thing that we're doing as we expand the one and done, which is 1 day a week trash recycling and compost or organic collection, is the city purchased the Ocean Core carts for Ryherg, and they are made from a blend of 40% post-consumer recycled material, 10% of which is recycled ocean-bound plastics culled from the waterways. And this was actually pushed out a lot in the Boston area, because Boston being a very water-friendly town. And that brings us to the executive order and legislation. So the mayor passed an executive order eliminating the use of single-use straws and stirrers in city facilities and rentals. He has tasked all of the city employees and all departments to phase out all of our single-use straws and stirrers, and that will be effective December 1st of this year. The mayor and council passed ordinance 1977 prohibiting disposable plastic bags from being provided to customers in retail establishments, and that will be effective January 1st. And we will work closely. I will work with ECD to get the word out to all our retailers and to promote their activities on the Green Living website to reduce the plastic bags, the single-use plastic bags, and what they're going to do. And then we'll also be working with our code enforcement, and they will go out and also reach out to all our businesses. And that brings us to phase 2. So we've wrapped up phase 1. This is what we've worked on for the last few months. And Mr. Jackson can attest, I'm really excited about this as I track people down literally in the streets to talk to them to say, please, please be part of this, is to solicit input from residents and businesses. So our plan going forward is to attend HOA meetings in person as COVID restrictions allow, or virtually. I will make myself available, as I'm sure many other people in the city will. But to talk to the HOAs, not necessarily to say, this is what we're going to do, but to really solicit input from them of how can we help you? What can we do to make this transition easier, to get more information out to your residents, to get them involved, using the city's exciting CACs as a starting point, and create small work groups. So my focus is on creating smaller, more manageable focus groups, so to speak, specific, measurable, attainable, and realistic goals. And each focus group will kind of overlap with the city at the center, but they will bring their strengths and their passions and their interests to the forefront and say, this is where we would like to focus on, and have them, basically run their own show with the city at the center, and making the ideas a reality. The CACs, the city's action committees, are a vital part of it, and we have many of them. And then hold community meetings, as we would like to start again if we could have meetings in person, but meeting with the mayor, the community meetings. We kind of lost a whole season where we were hoping that we would be able to get outside and meet with people over the course of the summer, but COVID had other thoughts. And then, of course, as we talk about climate change, this heat wave that we've experienced also prevented us from really having a bunch of people meet outside. So those are at least 3 areas that we're going to focus on to get more community involvement. And that's the end of our presentation. That's does anybody have any questions? Sir, would you like to say anything?
Nope.
Nope.
No, you said it all. Thank you very much. Thanks for cabinets, and thanks for COG for all their support during this process as well. I want to thank you, Michelle, for all your work. And we're not done. This is just the start. So again, I appreciate everybody tuning in today as well. Thank you.
And Mr. Jackson, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Mo and Michelle, for inviting me to be on board. Question regarding solar. Is that going to take into account possible parking lot spaces where solar could be installed, like what IKEA has done in Beltsville, as opposed to just rooftop solar?
Do you mean for the lights like we have in the parking lot?
No, solar actuals, in addition to rooftop solar, to install solar panels in city parking lots. I don't know if anyone's familiar with what IKEA has done.
You're talking about it like a solar. You're talking about like a solar array type.
Yes.
Oh.
I don't envision that. Parking's at a premium right now around town. I think we got to come up with some other ways. I think if you go up there to WSSC, or I'm sorry, to up there off Schweitzer Lane, you'll see where they have parking and they have a cover over it, which is all solar panels.
Right, that's the type of thing I'm speaking about.
Yeah, we have looked at maybe in a couple of our, like down at Public Works or something, to cover our trucks where we do something like that. But again, I mean, we got a ways to go. I just don't envision us taking up parking. It's a premium now. We've got to figure out some other ways.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to thank you for tuning in. And as the mayor said, this is just the beginning of the city's journey towards creating a more sustainable environment, one that addresses the needs of our people and our planet and the prosperity of our local economy. It's an important investment, and one hopefully that will benefit not only our current residents, but the next generation of people that will call Laurel home. So if no one else has any questions, I will ask. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Let me check the chat. Can the lights in the city offices be converted to a vacancy sensor and the lights turn on and off automatically? Actually, we do have that in several offices, that they are light censored. But I will check. And would Laurel consider charging residents to solid waste, but not for compostable waste and recycling? So Laurel residents, if you're talking about a pay-as-you-throw, that is something that has been proposed. It was not well accepted, and it would really be for a community such as ours. It would be very difficult to manage. So what residents get now is they do not pay residents other than their through their property taxes. They do not pay any additional fees for their refuse recycling, and certainly not composting. For the composting and the recycling, we, the city, provide the toters, the containers that we pick up. Your refuse containers, you're on your own. And we don't have a limit on how much recycling you can put out, as long as it's all recyclable materials. And our compost, our food waste containers are 35 gallons. They're toters on wheels with a secured locking lid to keep critters out. And if a resident wanted more than one, we'd be happy to provide that. Most residents are intimidated by 35 gallons, so they're asking for smaller ones, which is fine. And that's what we're looking into. And that's all part of community involvement of, what can we do to make this, to get you involved and to make this more agreeable to you. I mean, if 35 is too intimidating and you don't want to take up that kind of real estate in your home, would a 16-gallon work better for you? So it's that kind of communication that we're looking for. And I don't know, looking forward to these changes. Well, thank you very much. And I hope to see you. I hope you want to be a part of what we have going. And my email is up there, and my phone number. Oh, my phone number and my extension is up there too. Isn't that great? So people know how to get in touch with me. And we look forward to further in this conversation. Okay, and with that, I'm going to ask Laura to end the recording, and we will end the meeting. Okay, thank you.